Good afternoon. I'm Amanda Williams, and I'm here to talk to you about PECL Standard 9.L, Operations and Management, specifically 9.L, which states how a school leader manages the governance processes as well as the internal and external politics in order to increase school achievement. The article that I chose is a study that was conducted in Israel. The article was published last year in 2020 in Israel. And the author is, or the researcher is Yitzhak Berkovich. Berkovich talks about the whole idea of micropolitics and the senior management team and a principal's inner circle. So by micropolitics, he means how a principal and his or her senior management team, how they use power in formal and informal ways, in legitimate and illegitimate ways, in order to achieve their individual or their group goals within the school, and how this dynamic of the micropolitics, how much of an impact that can have on school achievement. So one of the things he did was he looked at a structural approach of the principal's, what he called the inner circle. So if you think of the principal as as the bullseye, if you think of a concentric circle, the principal is the bullseye, and then the circle right around the principal is the assistant principals, followed by the department chairs, followed by the subject heads and the school counselors. And he examined, since he was talking about the interrelationships that come into play with the politics, it is all about relationships. And in the decision making, that, of course, the closer you are to the circle, the higher the trust factor has to be. So in order to prove this, he ran a statistical test, and he created a trust profile. He started out with 655 teachers to create the profile, and then he took the profile that he created, and then he used it to narrow it down to 188 teachers, and those teachers were part of the principal's senior management team. This study was conducted in Israel, which had a state-owned educational system. The unions hired the teachers, so the principal was in a position in which he or she had to deal with teachers who were tenured and teachers whom he or she couldn't fire. So the results were that the closer a member of the senior management team was to the principal, the more important that trust became a factor. And that's not really surprising, but it's just that as school leaders, we do need to be aware of these things as we create our own teams, or as we work to form coalitions. That trust is important. And Berkovich defined, or he examined two layers of that trust. The first layer is the cognitive trust, how dependable and how consistent is the principal. And then the second layer, or the second kind of trust he talked about, was the affective trust, how a member of the senior management team would feel towards the principal. And of course, the closest people in the circle always had what he called a highly trusting profile. And then the people in the outer circle, such as the counselors and the grade level leaders or subject level leaders, did not. Trust was important, but it wasn't as central an issue. Actually, the farther out you moved from the circle, if you were in the outer layer and you were a subject or a grade level lead teacher, you were more than likely a person who's highly competent, possesses great professional knowledge, and the closer that you were to the inner circle, it's not that you weren't competent or anything, but it's just that, the principal, trust was just is everything. So, as school leaders, it's important that we establish a healthy synergy, we need to cultivate a healthy influence over the micropolitics. And we also do need to be aware that our decisions can make us or break us in the area of politics. One of the last things he mentioned was the whole idea of what happens if you're like a department chair and you're not like super close in the inner circle, but you're like just one step removed from the circle of, let's just say, an assistant principal. He did say that principals tend to use the department chair one of two ways. Number one, they tend to fill that position with people who were strong supporters of themselves, or number two, they would use a strategy called co-optation, in which, they would fill the position with an opposition leader in the hopes that he or she would adopt or assimilate a more cooperative frame of mind. And so Berkovich kind of he says that, that those strategies for both supporters and oppositional leaders could result in, is pros and cons to it. Right. But the whole idea is that, trust has to be cultivated. And one of the ways in which, we as school leaders can cultivate that trust is by engaging in dialogue, in turning mistakes that we and our teams have made, into learning opportunities to cultivate and to build that capacity. So 2 questions I want to leave you with. Number one, do you believe that a correlation exists between a school's effectiveness and the level of trust that teachers have in a principal or in a senior management team? How would you describe the trust that stakeholders have in either your principal or your senior management team? And number 2, how does your principal or senior management team build trust to empower you as a teacher? Or if you are a school leader, how do you foster trust? How do you cultivate that to empower teachers? What have you done, or what could you do? Or if you're a teacher, what has your leader done, or what could your leader do? Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing your responses.